Most of us likely know something about the history of Apple, given that former CEO Steve Jobs' life has been marveled at and scrutinized over in books, documentaries, and movies. His grand ideas pertaining to computer devices that were above and beyond anything ever made could be said to have been manifested for the most part in the iPhone. June 2017 marked the 10th anniversary of the first iPhone to hit the stores, and throughout that decade, Apple sold a whopping 1.2 billion phones. The iPhone is perhaps the most iconic phone ever created, even though its newest iteration has been criticized for being too expensive and having some flaws. In the phone business, Apple has one major foe, right now with a stronger market share in the smartphone business. It is these two companies we will discuss today in this episode of the Infographic Show, Apple versus Samsung. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button so that you can be part of our notification squad. Let's first take a brief look at how these companies got going. Apple was started by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in 1976. They began by making personal computers, with Wozniak the engineering brain in the team, and Jobs being more than able to market his unique ideas. It wasn't all plain sailing, and Jobs was forced out of the company before being brought back in 1996. He later became CEO, and in doing so, pushed his ideas for a more streamlined, accessible, and beautiful version of the PC. That took the form of the first iMac in 1998, and a year later we got the Apple logo that remains today. They gave us the iPod in 2001, the iTunes Music Store in 2003, the iPhone in 2007, the iPad in 2010, and Apple has since become a world leader in consumer electronics, offering high-end devices that have made the deceased Jobs a demigod of gadgetry consumerism. Samsung's history is much more diverse. Founded in 1938 by the now departed South Korean businessman Lee Byung-chul, Samsung started off as a trading company dealing in things such as noodles and other dried foods. Lee had his hands in many jars, and Samsung became involved in textiles, insurance, and sugar, among other things. In the 60s, the company turned to electronics, and then in the 80s, it got into telecommunications hardware. Samsung, the conglomerate, has been involved in too many kinds of business to mention, but on Samsung Electronics website, the company now states its three major areas of business as being mobile solutions, home and media solutions, and ASIC and foundry services. The last part relates to processors and technology infrastructure. Samsung's first ever smartphone was the Samsung Galaxy S, released in 2010, which runs on the Android operating system. The first ever tablet released by Samsung, and the first ever Android tablet, was also released in 2010, and that was called the Galaxy Tab. Now, let's have a look at these businesses in terms of size, value, and profits. On the Forbes list of the world's biggest companies, Apple takes the 9th spot. It is also the highest placed company whose business is computers and electronics. Forbes has its sales for 2016 at $217.5 billion, profits at $42.5 billion, assets at $331.1 billion, and a total value of $752 billion. Many reports surfaced in 2017 featuring companies in a race to have the first $1 trillion valuation, and right now Wall Street is betting that that company will be Apple. Trailing behind are Amazon, Google's parent company Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla. When Fortune put this list together, they didn't mention Samsung Electronics. Forbes put Samsung Electronics as the 15th biggest company in the world. The South Korean behemoth was said to have $174 billion in sales, $19.3 billion in profits, $217.1 billion in assets, and a market value of $254.3 billion. Samsung was the second highest placed tech company on the list, in front of those other American tech companies we just mentioned. We should point out again that Samsung is a conglomerate, and so you also have Samsung Heavy Industries, the second largest shipbuilder in the world, Samsung Engineering, Samsung CMT, and Samsung Insurance. If you added up all of Samsung's businesses, then it would be bigger than Apple by a long shot. Samsung Electronics alone has a larger workforce, with its estimated number of employees to be 308,745 compared to Apple's 116,000. We might also mention that many of these employees are actually making electronic components for Apple. So while Apple seems to be destined to be the first $1 trillion company and arguably the most fashionable consumer electronics company out there, we must also shine some light on some of Samsung's accolades. The giant is not only responsible for around 20% of South Korea's economy, but it's beating the rest of the world in many areas. For 10 years now, it has been the world's largest manufacturer of TVs, with a 21.6% market share compared to LG's 11.9% market share in 2016. Samsung has also been the world's largest smartphone manufacturer since 2011, and in the second quarter of 2017 had a 22% market share compared to Apple's 11.2% market share globally. For a while in 2017, The Verge reported that China's leading smartphone maker, Huawei, had knocked Apple off the second spot. So, while Samsung leads the way in the smartphone business and doesn't look like it can be caught, Apple is struggling to keep up with the innovative Chinese smartphone makers. We should also mention that in July 2017, Samsung Electronics took over Intel as the biggest semiconductor chip maker in the world. In terms of tablets, in 2017, Fortune reported that shipments were down overall, but that Apple is still beating second-place Samsung. Now let's take a look at some historical data. While Samsung has had the smartphone lead for a few years, it wasn't always this way. If we look at the biggest selling phones of all time, then the top is the indestructible and indefatigable Nokia 1100. It wasn't very smart though. In terms of smarter phones, Apple's iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus lead the way, having sold over 220 million units. Samsung's best-selling touchscreen phone was its Galaxy S4 that sold over 80 million units in the first 12 months. That's only 10 million more than Apple's iPhone 5 sold in its first 12 months. If we look at recent times, you can see some interesting differences in how these companies make money. In 2016, Apple introduced 3 new phones, but Samsung introduced 30 new phones. That year, Business Insider pointed out that Apple still made roughly twice as much revenue from mobile devices. We might also mention here Samsung's amazing exploding phone, the Galaxy Note 7, which reports state cost Samsung in the region of $5.3 billion. If you look at both companies' flagship phones right now, you'll see mixed opinions regarding which is the best, but on just about every list in the tech media, the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 will make an appearance, as well as Apple's iPhone 8 and the iPhone X. A bit of a stir has also been caused by Samsung's soon-to-come-out flexible Galaxy X, which you might say is not a very original name, but we'll let you decide which devices you prefer as we are not reviewing phones here. We could look at other things such as ethics, but it's difficult to judge who has better ethics, with Apple coming under fire for its sweatshop labor and suicide nets in China, to dubious tax tactics that are a cause celeb right now. Consumers have also been peeved from time to time regarding Apple's closed ecosystem. Samsung has been involved in a massive corruption scandal and also has had labor issues in China, not to mention a phone that could have really hurt people. So, which company or which company's products do you prefer? Let us know why in the comments. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time! Are part of our daily lives, whether we like it or not. For many Generation Zs, it would be almost impossible to imagine day-to-day life without both of these seemingly essential internet tools. Both make our lives easier in many ways, from connecting socially, to advertising, to conducting business. But which is the most successful to date, and who will last the longest as new technologies break onto the market? From simple search engines and social network tools to innovative artificial intelligence and virtual reality platforms, which team has what it takes to lead us through to the next wave of technical evolution? That's what we'll find out in this episode of the Infographic Show, Google versus Facebook. Larry Page and Sergey Brin were both PhD students at Stanford University when they founded Google in 1998 as a privately held company. At that time, conventional search engines did not take into consideration the number of times a page had been hit by users, and instead listed websites that contained the search item word the most amount of times. The pair developed the PageRank system, whereby the pages that were most relevant and most popular appeared first on any Google search. The name Google came about as a misspelling of the word Google, which represents the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. The name was meant to represent the sheer volume of information held by a Google search engine. An initial public offering occurred in 2004, and Google moved to a new headquarters in Mountain View, California. Primarily a search engine, Google's rapid growth since its inception has led to a number of offshoot products, including office tools such as email, document cloud services, sheets, and slide presentation tools. In addition, Google brought to the world Google Maps and Google Translation services, bringing the world closer together in communications. It has most recently partnered with electronic manufacturers producing smartphones, speakers, and virtual reality headsets. Facebook also began life at college. Students Mark Zuckerberg and roommates Eduardo Saverin, Andrew McCullum, Dustin Moskovitz, and Chris Hughes launched the social network service on February 4, 2004. Facebook started out life with membership limited to fellow Harvard students before expanding the network to include other colleges and universities and high school students. Popularity grew, and by 2006, anyone over the age of 13 was permitted access to the social network. By February 2012, the company was valued at $10.4 billion, breaking the record for the largest valuation for a newly listed public company. The primary revenue generated by Facebook is through advertisements hosted on the site. A move of headquarters to Dublin in October 2008 meant that in the following year, Facebook announced that it was making some real cash, owing no doubt to its new tax haven status. In 2009, Facebook was ranked as the most active social network site in the world, with an estimated 500 million users. In 2010, Facebook was valued to the tune of $41 billion. Facebook had moved by this time to the third largest internet company after Google and eBay. Facebook entered the Fortune 500 list at number 462 based on an income of $5 billion. The Fortune 500 2017 list, meanwhile, puts Google's parent company at number 22, while Facebook moved to 76. In the tech world, business acquisitions are rife, and Google's parent company, Alphabet, has snapped up Blogger, YouTube, Skybox, Maps, Wallet, Earth, and Hangouts. On the other hand, Facebook has swallowed up Ozio, Wave Group Sound, Oculus VR, WhatsApp, Lightbox.com, and Instagram. Alexa lists Google as the world's most visited website, and without a doubt, Google is one of the world's most valuable brands, but it has come under scrutiny owing to the alleged breaches of privacy experienced by its users. Facebook also came under scrutiny for the ownership and exploitation of users' personal content. Legal cases ensued against both sites, but both Google and Facebook have seemed to weather the storm of litigation and controversy surrounding the sharing of their users' personal content, locations, buying habits, and search histories. And speaking of searches, it's obvious that as a search engine, Google is king. But what about as a social network tool? Facebook wins for now as a social network platform, owing to its bigger user base, but Google Plus has its own advantages, including a slick interface and the ability to send larger files with its cloud services and file sharing capability. Google also has the benefit of sharing larger high-resolution photographs, which is important for those working as media professionals. Google keeps files safer, whereas Facebook's Messenger service seems to lose older information, which, for business purposes, is a major disadvantage. Also, Facebook has those annoying advertisements, while Google cleverly commutes its advertisements via AdSense to other websites. Part of Google's success historically is the early decision to not place ads in its search engine, which set it apart from the likes of Yahoo and other search engines. It has always maintained a clear user-friendly interface, but arguably, so has Facebook. As a business tool, it's fair to say that Google has the edge over Facebook, but as a social media tool, Facebook is still the most widely used and therefore the hands-down winner, particularly in the Far Eastern territories. As businesses, they have both succeeded tremendously, although Google was there first and has remained stronger. The truth is, most internet users use both Facebook and Google and see them as equally valuable. But how about looking into the future? In 2016, Mark Zuckerberg unveiled his plans for Facebook for the next 10 years. In Facebook's ideal world, everyone will be chatting with artificial computers, and virtual reality goggles will be as commonplace as cell phones. Picture a world where individuals sit at home wearing cyber glasses while connecting with imaginary humans. In a recent demonstration, Zuckerberg used an Oculus Rift headset with a 360-degree camera to create a version of the real world inside virtual reality. This brings to the technological arena a form of entertainment that the world has never seen before. The potential for VR as an educational tool is also very promising. The trouble with VR, though, that techies have yet to be able to solve is it tends to make people feel physically sick while using it. In response, Google unveiled their plans for a brave new world later in the same year. While Facebook has yet to break into the search markets, Google is making inroads with their social networking innovations. One of the key tools in Google's kit bag is YouTube, the undisputed champion of web video distribution. YouTube also has a community who socially interact as those on Facebook. With one eye on the virtual future, Google CEO Sundar Pichai revealed that the company is employing artificial intelligence to build a personal Google for each and every user. So the true winner in this Google versus Facebook battle could rest on who is first to tackle and solve the problems surrounding current VR and AI models. However, these visions are not very forward-thinking, as artificial intelligence is still in its infancy and virtual reality has a long way to go before becoming an everyday household medium. But one thing's for sure, both Google and Facebook are stockpiling their engineering talent and acquiring new companies in their efforts to make sure they walk away as victors in these new technological fields. In the meantime, the average internet user will remain, without a doubt, using the two tech giants in tandem and looking forward to what both offer in the future. One thing in life that is a competition is your business. Don't let your competitors get ahead by having a better, more powerful website. Create an amazing website today using Wix and support the infographic show at the same time by going to wix.com/go/infographics. Wix is an awesome platform for anybody, whether you're a complete beginner, a business owner, a professional designer, or even a professional website builder. Plus, you will never have to worry if your website is safe and secure. Whether it's a website for your e-commerce business, a restaurant, your band, or maybe just a blog, Wix does all the heavy lifting. Go to wix.com/go/infographics or click the link in the description and build a better website than any of your competitors. So, what do you think? Is Facebook superior to Google? Are they both equally useful? What do you think the future for both Google and Facebook will be? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to watch our other video called What is the Dark Web? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time! The meteoric rise of computer technology might not trouble the average millennial, but for those of you who remember the days before we were all hyper-connected, our reliance on modern technology might seem somewhat problematic at times. Where will we be in another 50 years? Iconoclastic entrepreneur Elon Musk has said if we don't get a handle on artificial intelligence, we may create something we'll sorely regret. Perhaps the most frightening depiction of tech dystopia is in the television series Black Mirror, which exposes a world lacking in empathy where what once were dreams have turned into living nightmares. Even now the media argues over automation. Will it mean a laid-back life for the masses, or mass unemployment under a technocracy? Innovation is unstoppable, and there are a handful of tech companies at the forefront of this innovation. We'll look at two of them today, in this episode of the Infographic Show, Google versus Apple. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button so that you can be part of our notification squad. If you've seen our other shows on Apple, you'll already know something about the company. It was started by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in 1976, with both men pushing to create the ideal personal computer. Jobs was forced out of Apple after what has been called a failed boardroom coup. The company, however, lacked a great leader, and Jobs was brought back to eventually become CEO. It was short after this that Apple grew into the innovative tech giant it is today. The world was equally impressed when Apple came out with the easy-to-use and beautifully made iPod 3 years later. 2 years after that came the iTunes Music Store, but what really shook things up was the release of Apple's flagship product, the iPhone. That was in 2007. The iPad came in 2010, and since these products came onto the market, Apple has arguably ruled the roost of consumer gadgets. As for Steve Jobs, he's now treated like a technology demigod. But where would we be without Google, the company behind the search engine that most folks can't live without? Google co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin met at Stanford University in 1995. It said the two did not agree on many matters, but one thing they did agree on was the creation of a search engine that ranked pages by their importance on the World Wide Web. This search engine was actually first called Backrub, but then fortunately for the pair, they saw the light and made the change to Google. Google Incorporated was born in 1998, and soon venture capitalists were poised to invest in this small outfit. Google just kept growing, and soon billions of searches would be made every day on its search engine. The company created its headquarters, the Googleplex, which would soon become synonymous with the avant-garde kind of tech workplace we see all over today. The company has since ventured into all kinds of markets, including the smartphone business, renewable energy, self-driving cars, enterprise services, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and all manner of smart devices. If we can get through life without becoming part of Apple's sometimes criticized ecosystem, it would be difficult to not be a consumer of a Google product. Because Google has its fingers in so many pies, it created a parent company that goes by the name Alphabet Inc. This is what we call a conglomerate. Now let's get straight to money matters. As we said before, some critics have said these companies are too big for our own good. If we take a look at the most recent Forbes World's Biggest Companies list, Apple is in 9th place. That is the highest ranked tech company on the list, and for some time now the media has been telling us Apple will become the world's first company to be worth a staggering $1 trillion. Forbes has Apple's sales on its latest list at $217.5 billion, profits at $42.5 billion, assets at $331.1 billion, and a total value of $752 billion. The next tech company down the list is Samsung Electronics, and in 24th place is Alphabet Inc. Forbes puts Alphabet's sales at $89.9 billion, profits at $19.5 billion, assets at $167.5 billion, and net worth at $579.5 billion. But 2017 has passed now, and so we must wait until Forbes creates its new list. As Fortune writes in 2017, while Apple generates bigger profits, it is only slightly ahead of Google in regards to which company will become the world's first company with a valuation of over $1 trillion. Fortune puts Amazon as the third company in the running, with Microsoft also a contender and Facebook not far behind. Tesla, it says, is a dark horse, but CEO Elon Musk seems to think his company is on a similar trajectory to one of SpaceX's rockets. Back to Google and Apple. It's thought that Apple has around 123,000 employees, but to the chagrin of President Donald Trump, Apple outsources much of its manufacturing to countries such as China and Taiwan. Apple's biggest partner in the assembling business is Foxconn, and it has factories in a number of countries around the world. Google has 73,992 employees as of 2017. It outsources such things as IT functions to India, while it's also been building its servers in Asia. Where is a better place to work? Well, that's not easy to say. According to one engineer that has worked at both companies, Google is better if you want to solve big technological problems, as Apple is more concerned with design and Google with technology. If you are a female engineer, where would be better? Google is currently being sued for pay discrimination based on gender, whereas Apple has been shouting from the rooftops that it has solved the gender pay gap. Which is the better company in general? When it comes to controversy, both these world leaders have been tainted more than a few times. Apple has come under the gun for human rights abuses in its assembly factories in China, and we all remember the news about those suicide nets at its assembly plants. But more recently, Apple has been skewered in the press for its offshore business in Ireland, and late last year, the billions it has saved from offshoring in the tax haven of the Channel Island of Jersey. CEO Tim Cook fired back, stating that Apple was the USA's biggest taxpayer. Alas, Google is no stranger to tax avoidance, so much so that in the UK, a Google tax has been mulled over to get something back from companies that funnel their profits through low-tax countries. It seems there is no angel in this department. What about their products? Which company could you just not live without? While it may be some time before we are being driven around in one of Google's autonomous vehicles, and even though we enjoyed a 30-minute dalliance with its machine learning Doodlebot, Google has a few things that we might take for granted. That is arguably its search engine, the Chrome browser, its Android operating system, Gmail, and to a lesser extent, its productivity suite or Google Suite. We might also mention that Google owns YouTube. To give you an idea on Google Power, its Chrome browser alone has an almost 60% share of the browser market. The Google search engine has a 75% share of the search engine market, and Android has a whopping 87% share of the mobile operating system market. But then we have those innovative and sleek Apple products, and also the Apple operating system iOS that Apple aficionados will tell you they cannot live without. I'd never go back, you hear many an Apple user saying. The question is, which company has really done the most for mankind, and looking into the future, who will be at the forefront of tech innovation? Both companies are making hay in the augmented and virtual reality space, and both are very serious about artificial intelligence. So, who will be on top in 10 years' time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called NASA vs. SpaceX. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time!
It seems Minecraft fans and Roblox fans don't always get along. They tend to think their game of choice is better than the other, and they're stubborn about it at times. You might have seen one particular Minecraft vs. Roblox animation, which has now garnered over 3 million views on YouTube. Here are some lyrics to a Minecraft vs. Roblox song. You were always playing Roblox, you were always playing Minecraft. How will we ever get this together? Playing different game franchises the other one despises. Is it really all that bad? Well, it seems some people do like playing both games, but as we said, there's also a rivalry going on. Today, we'll look at how the games do in a matchup against each other. We'll start with Minecraft, a game that's been called the grandfather of sandbox gaming. We won't give you a complete history as we've been through that before, but we'll explain at least how it got going. It was developed by a Swedish guy called Marcus Persson. He was huge on gaming but was looking for something a little different. Do you know how much he sold the alpha version for? The answer is $13. The game soon took off, and not long after, Persson quit his day job and started the company Mojang. In 2014, he sold the game to Microsoft, who wanted the company and all the intellectual rights. This soon led to the magazine Forbes putting the young Swede on the list of the world's billionaires. That tells you just how many people loved his creation. It's kind of funny now that when he sold his first few versions, he was ecstatic that he saw $150 in his PayPal account. He said in later interviews that he never expected to be rich in his life. Roblox doesn't have the same awe-inspiring romantic fairy tale background. You could say, though, that a lot of effort and time went into creating this game. In fact, the earliest development of it goes right back to the 1990s, but it wasn't until much later that it was released as Roblox. The two creators were called David Baszucki and Eric Castle, and on April 6, 2006, they released Roblox, formerly called Dynablox, to the public. By November, the game had 1,000 signed-up players. In December, that grew to 10,000 users. And within a year, that number was 100,000 users. That's all history. And what we want to know is, how do the games stand against each other now? Okay, let's start with Minecraft, a game we haven't talked about for a while, so we'll let you know that by the middle of 2018, it had an astounding 91 million players active monthly. But that hasn't changed much. And if you look at the lists of games with the most active monthly players, you'll find today Minecraft still has around 91 million active monthly players. Just so you know, it was 4th on the list. In front of Minecraft were League of Legends, Pokemon Go, and way out in front, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Guess which game was right behind Minecraft? And we mean right behind. Yep, it was Roblox, which today is said to have around 90 million active monthly players. In this respect, we could call the games neck and neck. Minecraft can take one of the biggest accolades in gaming though, because it's the best-selling game of all time. It's said to have sold over 176 million copies. Roblox is different in this respect as it's completely free. That doesn't mean it doesn't make any money, of course. In Roblox, you can purchase virtual currency for in-game upgrades or accessories for avatars. People can also buy a Builders Club membership, and that offers special privileges such as getting your hands on premium items for better avatars, getting rid of advertisements, and getting an item trading system. What does all this mean in terms of making money? It's hard to say just how much cash Microsoft has made from Minecraft. The company bought Mojang for a cool $2.5 billion, so that was, to say the least, quite the expenditure. But when you consider the number of copies sold and the going price right now of $26.95, a lot of money is being made. For the last few years, you might have paid between $20 and $30 for the PC version and console version. Microsoft also made money from things such as selling skin packs for Minecraft. And as we speak, new versions of Minecraft are being developed by Mojang. Microsoft hasn't released an exact figure, but some people have done the math and come up with the number $1.65 billion. That's what Microsoft might have made so far. But let us tell you this is a very rough estimate. Some sources also tell us that the net worth of Minecraft right now is in the region of $1.7 billion. Now, let's remember that a lot of the media back in the day said Microsoft was crazy for paying so much for Mojang. But seeing as the company is just getting stronger and the cash just keeps piling in, perhaps Microsoft made the right decision. What about Roblox? In 2019, reports told us that Roblox had grossed $700 million globally on mobile alone. That's from the start. The website Think Gaming tells us that the mobile game overall has a revenue of $1,554,586 daily. But again, as for how much the game is made in total, it's very confusing. Even if we look at net worth estimates, they differ from source to source. One source tells us that Roblox for Web has a net worth of just over $1.6 billion, while late in 2018, Variety reported that Roblox the company was worth in total $2.5 billion, which would make it more valuable than Minecraft. There seems to be very little between them, and all we can say is that both games are pulling in lots and lots of money. One of the big differences in the games is the astounding amount of money developers have earned in Roblox, though of course the company takes a cut of this. It was reported that in 2018 in total, developers in the game made over $70 million. One of the selling points of Roblox is that young people have an incentive to learn coding. They can do well from creating games in the game. Business Insider wrote in that year, one top creator cleared $3 million in earnings, while two more claimed $2 million. Lots of others earned thousands of dollars, which is a really big incentive to get writing code. Minecraft doesn't have such an incentive, but there is the Minecraft Marketplace, where creators can sell content they've made. We're not sure how much Microsoft has paid to creators in total, but reports in 2018 said that in a few months the company had paid out $7 million to 45 Minecraft content creators. It also takes a cut from what those creators earn. This is quite different though from Roblox, that reported in 2019 that in 2018, over 300,000 new games were published on Roblox. It also wrote this: under a Creative Commons license, we built out an educational curriculum that reached over 48,000 students across 22 countries in 2018. So while Minecraft no doubt is a good educational tool, Roblox can really get young people making money fast. As for which game is better, well, as we've said at the start, both games have their fans. You could say that Minecraft is better for lonesome virtual adventurers who enjoy going on their own way. Minecraft has multiplayer options, but Roblox was made to be a social game. As we've said before, the social environment could be seen as a personality-building exercise for players, although parents have raised concerns because a lot of strange stuff has been created in the game, which you could say is definitely not child-friendly. Those hidden dangers have become well documented, and Roblox is trying to weed out all the dark things in the game, not always with success. As the BBC pointed out in 2019, one parent said, "I thought he was playing an innocent game, only to discover her child had seen things a child should not see." The parent described what she saw as horrifying, saying it made her feel physically sick. With that in mind, you could say the solitariness in Minecraft isn't a bad thing, especially for the parents. We should say that Roblox has been quick to ban players who have created such content, and it's not as if it waits around every corner. So in terms of social aspects and learning coding, you'd have to say Roblox is the game of choice. If you're a parent, you'll just have to take Roblox's word for it that its human moderators are policing the game and they'll keep it child-friendly. While Minecraft might miss that social element for the most part, some kids just aren't social creatures, and as creatives, they can really succeed in this game. They can be the masters of their own domain, builders of worlds, rulers of virtual kingdoms, and that in itself is a great thing. It really depends on what kids want to do, but we think both games can provide a great educational experience. Both games can promote collaboration, problem solving, math skills, thinking, and reasoning. Both games promote creativity. So yeah, we won't tell you which we think is the better game in this respect. What we'll do now is look at some forums and see what the players are saying. The question was asked on one forum just lately in 2019, and here's what people said. Well, firstly, people said, as we have, that they're similar but not the same. One thing people pointed out is while Roblox is free, you need an internet connection to play it. While Minecraft, you can of course play without a connection, but for a price. Another person said that in Roblox, you can find much higher quality games to play, but they're still quite simple. Minecraft is just more basic. As one person said, chunky Minecraft has a lot of things to do in the game, but Roblox just has so much more. Most people we found had very positive things to say about both games, but something often said in the negative about Roblox was the fact bots are everywhere, and that's something to watch out for. In fact, this seems to bug quite a lot of people. We think we've said all that we can say for now. So the only thing to do is ask you guys which you think is the best game. We'd love to hear from people who have spent a considerable amount of time playing both games, so tell us what you think in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video, Ninja vs. Average Player, you, on Fortnite Battle Royale. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Do you love strange, unexpected stories that defy belief but are completely true? Then you'll love the new show I Am. Fascinating tales told from the perspectives of those who lived them. It's the crack of dawn and you've just turned up at the headquarters of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. On any other day, you'd still be in bed right now, but this isn't any other day. An urgent meeting has been called to discuss a mysterious pandemic sweeping the world, and it's down to people like you to stop it in its tracks. You were tossing and turning all of last night trying to think of a solution, but you've got nothing. The situation feels absolutely hopeless. You walk into a meeting room and there's a sea of worried faces. These are some of the most intelligent and hardworking professionals you know, but they all have bags under their eyes and disheveled hair. You probably look 10 times worse. As the director begins his address, everyone sits in silence, transfixed on his every word. He talks about how the outbreak will most likely trace back to a diseased animal transmitting to a human, a simple accident with overwhelming consequences. It originated in a faraway nation but spread like wildfire after officials failed to quarantine those in the affected city quick enough, with many contaminated people fleeing to other cities or nations. Now it's finally arrived here. It's weird. Failed quarantines, rapid spreading, origins in animals, it's all sounding strangely familiar, yet you can't put your finger on why. It's like you've lived through this before, but you can't have. Sure, there have been a few outbreaks of disease in your lifetime, but that's not what you're thinking of. And that's when it hits you. You almost jump up in the meeting with excitement. You have lived through this before, only not in the real world, in World of Warcraft. Back in your awkward teenage years when you still had the time to devote to something other than working for the CDC, you'd spend endless hours on that game, and you'd never forget the scenes that went down when an unexpected plague broke out. A new raid for highly skilled players had been launched, and you're not embarrassed to admit that you were one of the first players to give it a go. It was only for users of a certain caliber. but of course that included you. And so, along with 19 other players, you headed off to a dungeon called Zul'Gurub. You ventured into the deepest realms of the jungle, fighting off various trolls along the way, but you knew you were yet to meet your greatest enemy. After heading deeper and deeper, you finally found the dungeon and your adversary, a giant winged serpent called Hakar the Soul Flayer, an ancient blood god. Now it was just between him and all of you. Eyes on the prize, you were ready to give everything you had to defeating this monster. But as soon as you launched your attack, you were struck by a spell that immediately resulted in 300 points of damage. A few seconds later, you lost another 300 hit points, and you noticed the same thing happening to the other players. This was more than just a spell. Hakar was spreading a plague called corrupted blood, and it was one of the most virulent you'd encountered. To defeat Hakar, speed was of the essence. Although your total level was just over 4,000 hit points, you'd be sure to die in just a few minutes if the plague continued to sap your points at this speed. But as soon as you killed him, it would destroy the plague and cure you all. Even though it was just a game, you were determined to win, and you barely blinked away from the screen as you engaged in combat. This was game on. Yet you couldn't help but notice something strange happening. Some of your fellow teammates were summoning their pets. Why? Pets weren't going to help you win this fight. It made no sense, and it was annoying that they weren't trying as hard as you, but whatever, head in the game. After just a minute or two of fighting, all the players in your raid were losing their hit points rapidly. Everyone had caught the plague, either directly from Hakar or from each other. You watched hopelessly from your swivel chair as your character on screen began to gush blood. But Hakar was losing his strength too. If only you could carry on for a few seconds longer. Finally, the serpent fell to the ground and you breathed a sigh of relief. Hakar was dead, and like magic, the plague had vanished. You were still extremely weak and down to your last few hundred hit points, but at least now you could heal. You began to make your way out of the dungeon, another quest done. That was that. At least, that's what you thought. You arrived in a nearby city expecting to find life going on as normal, but instead, there was complete mayhem. Throngs and throngs of players on screen were bleeding and dropping to the floor, dying before your eyes. Skeletons were scattered all around. Straight away, you suspected that this was the corrupted blood plague. You had no idea how it had entered the city, but you knew you didn't want to run the risk of catching it again, so you teleported away without a second thought. What was going on? In 2005, the game's developer Blizzard didn't think they were doing anything revolutionary when they introduced a new dungeon raid into the popular World of Warcraft game. All they wanted to do was create a challenge for high-level players, so they created a plague, something that would aggressively tear down the health of the players until they defeated the character transmitting the plague. Because the opponent had to be defeated quickly, it added an extra layer of difficulty. The spell should have resulted in one of two possible outcomes: the players dying of the plague or Hakar being killed. Simple, right? Except it wasn't. Blizzard had missed one essential detail that allowed the disease to spread outside of the dungeon, creating the first virtual pandemic known to man. As well as a technical glitch, Blizzard made another fatal error. They assumed players wouldn't want to spread the disease, a logical assumption. There was no rational reason to spread the disease. The problem is that humans aren't always rational. The company had unwittingly created the perfect environment to safely study a pandemic. A complex virtual environment with millions of real people making decisions. The more you thought about it, the more similar it seemed to what was happening in the real world, although now, slightly more was at stake. Maybe you could apply some of the lessons learned. So you successfully escaped from the big city into the countryside without contracting the disease, and now you had some time to think. If everyone really was dying from the corrupted blood plague, how had it escaped from the dungeon? You messaged a few of your in-game friends, knowing a few of them also had completed the quest. One of them replied immediately, explaining that some of the people in his raid had been purposely getting their pets out during the fight until they caught the plague, and then summoning them to the cities and joking about it. A few minutes later, another friend admitted that he tried the same trick himself, out of curiosity for what would happen. It turned out that pets could contract the disease, and users had managed to spread it because the effect of the plague went on pause while the pet was dismissed, then returned once it was summoned elsewhere. Well, that explained why some of the players on your quest were fiddling around with their pets instead of focusing on defeating Hakar. But why had it even crossed their mind to try and spread the disease around on purpose? Well, to be honest, it was pretty annoying. All he wanted to do was get on with the game like normal, but some utter pricks had tried to be clever and ruined things for everyone else. Now the same guy who had purposely spread the disease from the dungeons into the city was saying he wanted to go to the center of the mayhem and see what was going on for himself. This guy had at least twice the number of hit points you did, so he wasn't too scared of the plague and thought he might be able to heal himself. Well, he went ahead. Your other friends teleported to the countryside where you were, a safe space from all the craziness. A few minutes later, Blizzard sent a message to all users announcing that a quarantine was now taking place in the most infected cities. To prevent the disease spreading further, nobody should leave those areas until they were able to fix the problem. Incredible, even the game developers were struggling. Surely they'd fix this soon. Next thing you knew, your friend had appeared in the countryside out of nowhere saying Blizzard hadn't actually banned teleportation out of the infected cities. And a few seconds later, you started to lose hit points. Oh great. So your so-called friend had now infected you all just for a joke, and there was probably no way to get rid of the plague now. Unsure of what to do, you logged out and hoped for the best. By allowing pets to get infected, Blizzard had committed a fatal error. There was no sensible reason for players to summon their pets to different destinations while they were in the quest. But like we'd already established, people aren't always rational. Lots of the players were just looking for a bit of mischief. Once these pets arrived in the big cities, they infected low-level players who died instantly from the plague due to their low number of hit points. Non-player controlled players were infected too, and because they couldn't die themselves, it allowed them to spread it to even more users. There was no cure for this horrible plague that had swept across the virtual land. Although many healers had rushed to the aid of dying players, the corrupted blood plague was a typeless debuff, meaning it was almost impossible to heal, and by keeping those who were infected alive for longer, the healers ended up doing more harm than good. Other players realized they could make themselves immune by flagging themselves as being on PvP mode, but this was only a temporary solution. So those who wished to spread the disease eventually cottoned on and flagged themselves too so they could continue spreading. The pandemic showed some interesting results about the psychological reaction of humans. Some rushed to infect as many people as possible while others tried to help. Many people chose to ignore the quarantine that was imposed, thinking of themselves and not the wider social implications. Maybe behavioral science is just as important as the biological science and epidemiology. You should probably mention that in the meeting. But anyway, what became of the disease? Well, after searching through a few forums, you finally accepted that there was nothing you could do to stop yourself from dying of that stupid corrupted blood plague. Your friend was also doomed to die, of course, but he didn't seem to care. You turned up in the graveyard as a ghost and had to look for your dead body to resurrect yourself. That's why you hated dying. By the time you resurrected yourself, a few hours had passed, but the pandemic was still spreading around like wildfire. Feeling you couldn't trust anyone, you looked for another remote corner and decided to wait it out without alerting anyone about your whereabouts. After browsing a few forums, you saw other users posting screenshots of some of the towns that had been quarantined, where the pavements were still white from the vast number of skeletons. It seemed like everyone was still ignoring the quarantines too. What was going to happen? The corrupted blood incident affected around 4 million players. The main reason the disease spread so quickly was the reaction of the users. Many people who had been in the big cities at the time of the outbreak chose to ignore the official advice and escape to safer areas, but this had spread the disease further. One tiny accident had snowballed beyond belief, and it had done so extremely quickly. The root cause of the plague had been animals, but it had spread further because of humans, and that sounds very familiar too. Of course, the stakes are higher in real life. Hopefully not many people would try to spread a disease on purpose just for a laugh, but it only takes one crazy person to cause a world of damage, and almost as dangerous are those who ignore official warnings and spread the disease unwittingly. Come to think of it, the teleports in World of Warcraft serve a pretty similar purpose to real-life airplanes. Eventually, Blizzard fixed the problem using a simple solution, resetting the computers. Maybe all those hours spent playing World of Warcraft weren't such a waste of time after all. People might have laughed at you once, but now you're one step ahead of them. You've lived through this before. Now you've just got to figure out how to switch off the computers. Now for more about plagues, check out why the Spanish flu killed so many people, or what made the Black Death so deadly. Click one now before the global pandemic gets us all.
What we currently do in our free time is certainly very different than it was 20 years ago, with the major difference being that we statistically have more screen time now than ever before. According to the US Labor Bureau, people of all ages are still huge consumers of TV, and that is what most of our leisure time is spent doing. We still read books, we still exercise and play sports, but in the US at least, both of those activities have been overshadowed by playing games on computers. According to gaming research conducted in 2015, 155 million Americans played games regularly, with the franchise Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and FIFA all being popular. The average player was 35 years old, and 4 out of every 5 households had a games console. Today we'll discuss the kings of the consoles in this episode of the Infographic Show, PlayStation 4 Pro versus Xbox One X. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button so that you can be part of our notification squad. The war of the consoles has been going on for some time, a battle that has mostly raged between Sony's PlayStation, Microsoft's Xbox, and various consoles made by Nintendo. You have to go all the way back to 1988 until you see another contender, and that was Sega's Genesis console. Sega took its spot in the limelight in part due to the success of Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, which together sold over 21 million copies. But Genesis is only the 15th best-selling console of all time. The most popular ever was PlayStation 2, which sold around 155 million units. Next is Nintendo DS, which sold 154 million units, and after that is Nintendo's Game Boy. Microsoft's best entry on the list is the Xbox 360, which in 6th place sold around 84 million units. The most recent battle has been between PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. According to Business Insider in 2017, PlayStation 4 has almost sold 60 million units compared to the 26 million units Xbox One has sold as of January 2017. Put simply, Sony has a ridiculous lead over Microsoft when it comes to the video game business, said the article. But why is that, and is it about to change? Well, one of the major factors has been price. When the two consoles were released in 2013, the Xbox One was $499 and PlayStation 4 was $399, enough to sway anyone with a small budget. If you check out various online stores today, the Xbox One S is still around $250, while the PS4 is listed in various online stores for around $299. We should add that another thing that has shaped how many units are sold is the price war, such as various deals and bundles we might see on Black Friday. Another thing we should point out is that Microsoft's Xbox One was always intended to be much more than just a device for gaming. It was also supposed to be an entertainment system for the home. PlayStation 4 has always been more dedicated to gaming in itself. But now that we have the PlayStation 4 Pro at $399, $100 less than the Xbox One X at $499, what decisions should we make? It could all depend on what your needs are, as some pundits have said while the consoles are similar, they are not exact side-by-side rivals. First, let's have a look under the hood, so to speak. The PlayStation 4 Pro has a 4K resolution, high dynamic range, basically technology that gives you spectacular viewing quality, and according to Sony, it has twice the graphics power of its predecessor. Sony also said in a demonstration it could reach resolutions not thought to be possible on consoles in 2016. The console contains an 8-core, 2.13 GHz processor, it has 8 GB of GDDR5 and an additional 1 GB of RAM, which will handle background processes. It boasts integrated AMD Polaris graphics with 4.2 teraflops of performance. You can also buy a virtual reality headset for this console, while right now the Xbox One X doesn't have such a thing. This will cost you over $400 though. You cannot play 4K Blu-ray discs on this console, but can stream 4K content. As you cannot use a 4K disc, you'd have to spend quite a bit of money on a standalone player. The Xbox One X claims to have 40% more power than any other console, calling itself the most powerful of its kind in the world. It also has 4K resolution and HDR. It will run a little faster with its 8-core 2.3 GHz processor. The Xbox One X will have 12 GB of GDDR5. As for GPU, it boasts integrated AMD graphics with 6 teraflops of performance. As you can see, Microsoft is correct in saying it is the most powerful console out there, and so in terms of playability, you should get a more realistic feel within the game environment. Both consoles will play original 4K games, and also what Microsoft calls X-optimized games and PlayStation 4 Pro calls enhanced games. A bonus for Xbox buyers is that you can play 4K Blu-ray discs. If all the jargon is a tad too difficult to understand, the magazine Wired was nice enough to explain it all in layman's terms. First of all, Wired points out that if you want to play 4K games on your 4K console, then you better have a 4K TV or monitor. If you don't, it could be compared to buying a Hugo Boss suit and only wearing it to eat at McDonald's. 4K TVs are not too expensive, so that shouldn't be a problem. But where the price differential makes all the difference is in the extra teraflops in the Xbox. This means with that console you'll be able to play 4K games and not lose the frame rate. The Xbox stands more chance at keeping 4K quality because of the added teraflops. This is why Xbox chief Phil Spencer proudly called the Xbox One X the only true 4K console. We can also give some more credit to the Xbox One X for actually being smaller in size than its foe. This is because it uses a pretty high-tech liquid cooling system compared to the PlayStation's regular fan system. Let's go through the main differences again. Xbox One X has more power, and so your 4K experience will be purer. It has a Blu-ray 4K drive and is smaller. For $100 less, with the PlayStation 4 Pro, you get slightly inferior game quality, but do have the opportunity to buy a VR headset for games. In terms of games, both consoles will allow you to play your older games on these new consoles, and some of those games have now been enhanced. According to some pundits, if you buy the PlayStation and want 4K quality, you should get your hands on Horizon Zero Dawn, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. If you go with Xbox and want the same quality, the games to buy are Forza Motorsport 7, Madden NFL 18, and the upgraded Gears of War 4. These are just a handful of games from many more available with 4K quality. So, do you own one of these consoles? Which one would you say is superior and why? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video called Minecraft vs. Roblox. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time!